Right at the start, in front of the school, Momo Ayasi's first boyfriend stops her in the middle of the street, telling her that she won't go on a date today unless she lends him some money. And to top it off, he demands that she pay for the biggest snack. Disgruntled, Momo tries to kick him in the face, but he dodges and, to make matters worse, hits her in the stomach. He starts insulting her, saying that he has no interest in girls who don't lend money or let loose anymore. Furious, Momo responds with a string of unconventional insults, which leaves her friends a little confused. Noticing the reaction, she feels misunderstood and complains that they should be on her side. After all, he was her first boyfriend. Instead of consoling Momo, her friends criticize her, reminding her that they always warned her that this kind of guy wasn't for her. A friend asks what she saw in him, and Momo, a little embarrassed, replies that he looked like the actor Ken Takakura. Her friends mock her for this, reminding her that guys like Takakura haven't existed for ages. Momo, discouraged, agrees and throws herself on the table, lamenting that she'll never find her ideal man. She starts walking through the school corridors, lost in her thoughts, and ends up seeing a group of bullies throwing paper balls at a nerd, trying to annoy him. Momo enters the room and interrupts, picking up the magazine the boy was reading. As she flips through it and realizes it's about aliens, she calls him pathetic and walks out huffing with anger, still frustrated. Shortly afterwards, the nerd appears behind her, curious, and says that Momo must be interested in what he was reading. After all, that alone would explain why she spoke to him. Momo, surprised, corrects the boy, saying that she wasn't trying to make friends. He ignores her and begins to explain that the article is about US presidents, who, according to him, have already met secretly with reptilians in a secret project called Project Pegasus. Momo Ayasa is not impressed by Okarun's conspiracy theories and makes it clear that she doesn't believe in aliens or UFOs. But Okarun, firm in his beliefs, insists and provokes her even more, saying that the United States itself has already recognized the existence of UFOs and has even created a space force to fight them. He starts reciting a series of theories from his magazine to Momo, making her impatient. Irritated, Momo explodes, saying that she doesn't have the patience to listen to this nonsense, especially after being dumped by her first boyfriend. She goes on to tease him, saying that this is exactly why he has no friends. After realizing that she had made a mistake, Momo apologizes, saying that although she doesn't believe in aliens, she does believe in ghosts. Okarun then teases her, saying that ghosts don't exist. Momo replies that her grandmother is a medium and that she has witnessed strange and intense exorcisms, with possessed people going through frightening convulsions. Okarun hits back, saying that these convulsions can have a medical explanation and that this doesn't prove anything. While the two of them are arguing, almost coming to blows, Momo's friends pass by and make fun of them, thinking that Momo is investing in nerds now. One of her friends even comments that she doesn't hate her new attitude. In the heat of the argument, Momo and Okarun make a bet. She says that if he proves the existence of ghosts, he will have to be her servant. On the other hand, Okarun says that if he can prove the existence of aliens, Momo will have to serve him. Momo heads to the hospital, famous for UFO sightings, while the Nerdola heads to the haunted place Momo suggested. Although Okarun is very apprehensive about what he will find, he decides to face his fear to prove to Momo that ghosts don't exist. While each of them explores the place indicated by the other, they begin to talk and get to know each other a little better. Momo says that ever since she was a little girl, she made a specific gesture whenever she left the house, a practice that her grandmother, who is a medium, taught her. This gesture continued even when she went to school, where she was bullied, including by a boy she liked. Over time, Momo realized that she didn't feel angry because she had been mocked, but because this boy had ridiculed her grandmother's beliefs. Momo then asked Okarun what led him to believe in aliens. He refuses, saying that he has no specific reason, but then he starts to notice footprints made of something that looks like blood coming towards him. When he shines his flashlight around, he sees nothing, but when he turns around, he comes face to face with a frightening old woman. She mumbles something disturbing to Okarun. She wants to steal his marbles, man, leaving him terrified and running, trying to convince himself that she was just an eccentric old woman. As he runs, Momo warns him that there are legends on the internet about a figure called Grandma Turbo, and that he mustn't try to overtake her or he'll be cursed. But it's too late. The old woman catches up with him and he's captured. Realizing that he has lost contact with Okarun, Momo decides to go and check what is going on. On the way, all the lights in the hospital start to go out, and 3 strange figures appear, capturing her. These strange beings introduce themselves as Serpients, inhabitants of a planet called Sherpo. They try to calm her down, saying that they are friendly, but Momo is suspicious, especially when she realizes that they have removed her clothes. She begs to leave, but the aliens begin to explain more about their species, which is made up only of men. To maintain their population, they resort to cloning, but now they intend to use Momo to procreate and plan to study her body to discover a new way for their species to survive. Momo firmly resists the idea of the Serpients, who then decide to use a psychokinesis technique to manipulate her mental state and make her more receptive to their plans. In the middle of the process, however, Momo's cell phone rings. One of the aliens answers it, and surprisingly, Okarun and Turbo Granny appear on the screen, coming out through the phone. They quickly start attacking the Serpients. Soon afterwards, Okarun reveals himself, explaining that he has been cursed by Grandma Turbo. Momo sees him and asks him to help her, freeing her from the chair. Meanwhile, one of the Serpients looks intently at Momo's cell phone, fascinated by what he considers to be advanced technology unknown to them. Okarun then goes on the attack once again, but is pinned against the wall by one of the aliens. In an attempt to calm the situation, Okarun tries to negotiate, saying that he will do anything to get Momo to leave him alone. However, the Serpients reject him, saying that they prefer less violent humans and have a preference for women, not men. So they go back to using psychokinesis to try to control Momo's mind. During this process, she remembers a conversation with her grandmother, who always taught her a specific gesture for protection, saying that it prevented accidents and illnesses. Thinking of the mockery she suffered for following these family beliefs, Momo rebels and decides that she will never repeat the gesture, rejecting her grandmother's traditions. However, as she tries to push these memories away, Momo realizes that her mind continues to resonate with the power of that ancient tradition. Momo manages to free herself from the chair using only the power of her mind, reducing the Serpient's psychokinetic power. Feeling victorious, she regains confidence in her grandmother's traditions, correcting her previous words and stating that her grandmother had always been a true spiritist. She then expels the Serpients, sending them away. Suddenly, Okarun jumps on her, acting strangely, and Momo tries to bring him back to reality. Realizing that he won't get better, Momo performs a purification, separating Granny Turbo's spirit from Okarun's body. Even with the separation, the curse remains, and Turbo Granny explains that she took his cucumber, which means that he is still cursed. She challenges Momo, saying that if she wants her cucumber back, she must meet her in the tunnel. Granny Turbo leaves, ignoring Momo's requests to return what belongs to Okarun. Seeing the Serpient's ship crash to the ground, Momo admits that she now believes in aliens, while Okarun, for his part, says that he believes in ghosts, since he was cursed by one. Determined to get his precious cucumber back, Okarun wants to go to the tunnel immediately, but Momo insists on going along, explaining that he could lose control if the effect of his psychic power wears off. She instructs him to put on his clothes, but Okarun says that it's she who needs to cover up, as he can't face her like this. He makes a comment that he's kind of a weird guy, which reminds Momo of the phrase used by Ken Takakura, her favorite actor. She tries to disguise her sudden excitement and asks him his name. The boy reveals that his name is Takakura Ken. Momo is incredulous when she hears the name Takakura Ken and doubts that the boy is serious. However, he insists and reaffirms his name, leaving Momo even more surprised. She accidentally kicks him and makes him temporarily lose control of the curse, but he soon regains it. To avoid further confusion, Momo suggests that he doesn't use his real name when they are close, proposing the nickname Okarun, as it matches his fascination with the occult. Although he finds it strange, he decides to accept and introduces himself as Okaran when he is with her. As they continue, Momo realizes that it's already dawn and is relieved, as she believes that Grandma Turbo won't attack them during the day. She invites him to her house, but warns him that her grandmother is strict with boys and has almost eliminated her ex-boyfriend. When they arrive at the shrine, Okaran tries to enter, but an energy barrier stops him and he almost catches fire. Momo quickly notices an amulet on the pillars and, after deactivating the barrier, asks him to try again, assuring him that if he starts on fire, she'll throw him in the river. Reluctantly, he approaches slowly and, realizing that he is safe, finally enters. Momo laughs as she sees his hair stand on end from the shrine's energy, while he complains, asking for a little more empathy, as he has just faced great danger. Moving on, Momo calls her grandmother, but notices that the house is empty. She invites Okarun in, asking him to stay away while she changes. However, the curse strikes again, and he accidentally enters the room. Momo, already changed, offers him a coat and mentions that he should take a look at himself, remembering that Grandma Turbo cursed him and took something important from him. Taking a look at where his cucumber should be, Okarun despairs, realizing that he really has nothing. Momo insists on seeing, but he, totally embarrassed, shouts that he won't show anything. Momo, laughing, comments that he has nothing left to hide, and that he doesn't need to worry so much. Okarun, frustrated, accuses her, saying that if she hadn't made that bet, none of this would have happened. Momo corrects him, saying that he was never interested in these stories from the start. She reminds him that he was the one who kept talking about it, so deep down, he's also responsible for what happened. At this point, Okarun opens up and admits that he only continued the conversation because he was eager to make a friend, since he'd never had one before. He explains that he made an effort to interact with Momo, but soon realized that her world is totally different from his. Feeling out of place, he apologizes for involving her in this complicated situation, saying that she can ignore him once they've sorted it out. Momo replies that Okarun's tendency to jump to the wrong conclusions about others is what makes him push people away. She asks him to stop asking her to ignore him, as he still wants to talk about these nerd things. Okarun, uncomfortable, turns his face away, and Momo keeps pressing until he explodes, calling her reckless for exposing his weaknesses like that. In the middle of their discussion, they are interrupted by the sound of a doorbell. Okarun deduces that it is Momo's grandmother arriving, but Momo finds the noise strange, as she has never heard that bell before. She then remembers something her grandmother told her. The shrine has two bells, one for humans and one for evil spirits. Remembering this, Momo realizes that by removing the talisman from the entrance, she has left the place vulnerable. Okarun panics and asks what they should do. Momo takes the talisman and decides to put it back on the pillar. If it's an evil spirit on the other side of the door, it will burn when it enters. Okarun, fearing that he too will be burned, quickly moves away, while Momo scans the room for the spirit. Suddenly, they find themselves trapped in the shrine by a wall that covers the whole place. In a critical situation, Momo looks at the talisman and notices her nose starting to bleed. She notices a black mist in the air, which seems to be causing the strange effect on her and Okarun's bodies. Just then, a shadowy figure appears and accuses them of being people of bad faith, saying that they have broken a promise. However, it doesn't give any details about what they've done and starts chasing them, trying to hit them with its shadowy hands. Momo asks if that being is another spirit attached to Okarun, but he denies it, explaining that it is a type of alien known as the Flatwoods Monster, or 3-meter alien. He comments that there are studies suggesting that many people who see psychic phenomena also have a tendency to see UFOs. In other words, Okarun suspects that there may be some connection between ghosts and aliens. Noticing the creature in front of them, Momo realizes that it is related to the aliens they saw the night before. Desperate, she looks for something to dispel the poisonous mist that surrounds them, because if they keep breathing it, it's only a matter of time before they are severely weakened. Momo comments that she can't use her psychic powers properly, while she's still keeping the curse under control in Okarun's body. Suddenly, Okarun regains consciousness, but notices that his left arm looks different. Seeing no other option, he decides to confront the creature directly, asking Momo to release his curse. She asks him why this sudden change, and he explains that if the enemy really is an alien, he won't hesitate to face it. He therefore insists that Momo release the curse, while still maintaining control over his mind. Momo is reluctant, explaining that she doesn't have a perfect command of her powers to fulfill his request at this level. But, seeing Okarun's determination, she decides to collaborate, even without guarantees. As soon as the curse is activated, he feels his body overflowing with immense power. On the other hand, he also begins to feel strangely depressed, uttering melancholy phrases. Despite this, he continues to prepare for the fight. When the enemy attacks by surprise, Okarun's body automatically dodges, avoiding the evil spirit's blow. Seeing this, Momo feels a growing sense of relief. Maybe now they really do have a chance of winning this battle. Suddenly, Okarun starts to feel strange, as if he's feeling sick, and the evil spirit takes advantage of this weakness to attack him, throwing him towards Momo in her human form. Okarun apologizes, explaining that his body can't cope with the overload of power from the curse. It's more than he can bear. And to make matters worse, he realizes that he has only managed to slightly injure the spirit, hitting only its fingers. This makes him think that victory is further away than ever. Observing the spirit's movements, Momo notices that it behaves like a sumo wrestler. She quickly formulates a plan. If they can make the spirit touch the ground with their hands, they can beat it, following the rules of sumo. With this in mind, Momo asks Okarun to focus on the spirit's feet, while she tries to knock it down with her psychic power. Working together, they manage to make the spirit touch the ground with one of its hands. As expected, that hand disappears, but the monster quickly recovers, returning to its attack position and pressing Momo against the wall. Okarun begins to lose control of the curse again, especially now that Momo is out of combat. Momo then extends her hands towards Okarun, taking control of the curse once again. She then turns her focus to the spirit, saying that he is cheating because, by touching the ground, he should have accepted defeat. Meanwhile, Okarun asks Momo to release the curse completely, saying that her only intention now is to defeat the spirit, regardless of the consequences for her body. But Momo insists, saying that she is already attacking the spirit and asks him to watch, as the spirit's trickery has angered her to the point where she wants to resolve the situation herself. The spirit, also angry, intensifies its attack. Okarun again asks Momo to release the curse so that he can fight the spirit evenly. Despite being in a dangerous situation, Momo stands firm and finally manages to place the talisman at a strategic point, causing the spirit to burn instantly. In this moment of relief, the two embrace. When they open their eyes, they realize that their view of the shrine has returned to normal. Momo feels relieved, as she believed they wouldn't make it out of the battle alive. Soon afterwards, however, Okorin begins to lose control again, and Momo has to activate her power once more. She notices that her hair is in a different style, and jokes that she preferred her previous cut, which was funnier. At the same moment, Momo feels dizzy and faints. With that, Okorin loses control again, and the curse of Grandma Turbo takes over his body once more. Meanwhile, Dodoria, a renowned psychic, is on a local talk show interrogating a young idol, asking questions that are not appropriate for her age. One of the producers wonders if it wouldn't be problematic to broadcast the show in this way, but another producer assures them that they won't have any problems, as the show's audience is limited. After finishing recording, Dodoria takes a cab to leave. The driver recognizes her from TV and, curious, asks if she really has psychic powers. Irritated by the question, Dodoria asks him to stop the car immediately, saying she's going to get off right there. The driver, realizing that he has made her uncomfortable, tries to apologize and explains that he just wanted to see her powers up close. Ignoring his explanation, Dodoria tells him to get out of there if he wants to stay alive. While walking, Dodoria comes across Granny Turbo attacking Momo in the middle of the street. Without hesitation, Dodoria advances against the spirit, driving a nail into her and revealing that Momo, the girl being attacked, is her granddaughter, who always seems to attract trouble. In the midst of the confrontation, Dodoria manages to lead Granny Turbo into a trap she has prepared, a circle of protection where any spirit that crosses the line will be instantly destroyed. Approaching Granny Turbo, Dodoria teases her, while the spirit angrily promises that it will devour her at some point, as it can't be kept trapped there forever. Dodoria, unperturbed, makes it clear that she doesn't just plan to keep her locked up, she intends to destroy her. With determination, Dodoria strikes Granny Turbo several times with a club, warning her not to try to go beyond the circle. Desperate, Granny Turbo warns that if she is destroyed, the human she is cursing will also suffer the consequences and could die. Even so, Dodoria, showing total disinterest, states that she has no compassion for those who deceive her granddaughter, and that includes even humans. Soon after this epic fight, Momo wakes up frightened in her room, thinking it was all just a bad dream. She rushes downstairs to see her grandmother, but is interrupted by Dodoria, who asks her to keep it down so she can concentrate on the TV. During the conversation, Dodoria discovers that Momo has been to a haunted place and questions what she was doing there. Momo explains that while talking to a friend, they decided to explore haunted places out of curiosity. Dodoria, however, seems more interested in the program she's watching and ignores Momo, which irritates her. She then asks where Ken Takakura is, whom Dodoria refers to as the boy. Dodoria replies that she has already taken care of the evil spirit, which worries Momo. But Dodoria, imitating her granddaughter, reminds her that she doesn't believe in ghosts and suggests that Momo shouldn't worry about such things, realizing that her grandmother still holds a grudge for what she said in the past. Momo gets down on her knees, apologizes, and asks what exactly her grandmother did to the spirit. Dodoria simply tells Momo to check the main hall of the shrine. Momo runs off, warning that she won't forgive her grandmother if something has happened to Ken. On the way, she begins to blame herself for everything that has happened, thinking that none of this would have happened if she hadn't called Ken into the cursed tunnel. When she gets there, she finds Ken safe and eating happily. Ken, on seeing her, begins to cry with relief, thinking that she could have died. In response, Momo slams the door and starts complaining, frustrated by all the needless alarm. Soon after, Dodoria appears and explains that Ken will be protected as long as he is confined to the house, as his curse won't manifest itself there. This makes Momo even angrier with her grandmother, because Dodoria had said that she had killed the spirit, which Momo interpreted differently. Dodoria then observes Momo's despair and raises the suspicion that the boy is more than a friend, perhaps a crush, given her concern at the thought of Ken being dead. However, Momo corrects her grandmother and explains that until Ken Takakura, Okaran, gets his amulet back, he will remain under Grandma Turbo's curse. Momo takes part of the responsibility for what has happened and decides that it is her duty to help him. Even after hearing the whole story, Dodoria continues to insinuate that her granddaughter has a crush on Okaran, but Momo brushes this aside and reveals that since her experience with the aliens and a UFO, she now possesses psychic powers. Dodoria reacts skeptically, disbelieving the story of the aliens, and Momo understands her grandmother's reaction, since she herself only believed it after seeing it with her own eyes. Trying to prove her point, Momo demonstrates her psychic powers, using them to keep Okaran under control and prevent him from losing his mind due to the curse. Dodoria watches and says that they've messed with a really dangerous creature. She then explains more about the origin of Grandma Turbo, revealing that this entity is a modern yokai who has terrorized several regions. Dodoria tells us that she learned of Grandma Turbo's presence in the tunnel where Okaran entered, and when she got there, she felt such an intense energy that she couldn't even enter. She then explains the concept of bound spirits, ghosts that remain in specific places because of some powerful attachment. These spirits are practically invincible when they are in their own territories, and any sensible medium avoids confronting them in these places. She then warns Momo that in the case of that tunnel, Grandma Turbo has merged with the bound spirit of the place, making it even more dangerous. Dodoria suggests that Momo not get involved with this entity, pointing out that she has no direct obligation to solve Okaran's problem and should therefore put it aside for her own safety. Momo is in doubt about what to do, but when she thinks about what her idol would do, she decides that she has to help her friend Okaran. Dodoria, noticing her granddaughter's hesitation, teases her again, insinuating that she really is in love with the brat. Even though she can't dissuade her from going into the tunnel, Dodoria advises Momo to use a tag strategy with Grandma Turbo, since the creature relies heavily on her speed and will accept a challenge if provoked enough. Dodoria, however, warns of a problem. The bound spirit's territory is inside the city of Shono, so Momo will need to lure Granny Turbo out of the city in order to weaken her and stand a chance of defeating her. Momo, realizing the complexity of the plan, admits that her thin legs wouldn't help her run faster than Granny Turbo. She suggests that her grandmother place a talisman in the tunnel, but Dodoria explains that this is not possible, as she can only activate her barrier technique when she is inside the city, where she can borrow the power of the god who protects that place. To get around this, Dodoria suggests that Okaran carry Momo on his back, allowing her to focus on controlling the curse. Okaran, however, reveals that he can only run at high speed twice before he needs to rest. Upon hearing this, Dodoria decides that he needs to train until he can run non-stop. She then gives Okaran a strict training schedule and suggests that Momo train his psychic powers even more, as he will need at them to keep up with him. At the end of the instructions, Dodoria tells them to get a good night's rest, as the intensive training will begin the next morning. As he begins his training, Okaran feels the urge to go to the bathroom. Momo explains that if he goes in, she will lose control over the curse, as the walls will block her psychic powers. Dodoria, curious about how Momo controls the curse, asks how she does it. Momo explains that she can see an aura around Okaran. When she squeezes this aura with her hands, it disappears, allowing him to stay under control. Momo recalls the moment when she first awakened her psychic powers and felt invincible, but when she sees that she can only manipulate small auras, she realizes her limitation and feels discouraged. Dodoria then advises Momo to close her eyes, explaining that she relies heavily on sight to control the curse and must try to use all her senses. Meanwhile, Okaran, increasingly uncomfortable, tries to run to the bathroom. Momo tries to stop him, claiming that he doesn't have permission to use it, but without revealing that he actually wanted to go first. Okarun takes advantage of the confusion and shoots ahead, beating Dodoria and Momo in a close race. However, he has to use the toilet under Momo's watchful eye to prevent his curse from awakening at this critical moment. Meanwhile, Dodoria remembers Momo's confidence when she awakened her powers and reflects on the evolution and challenges her granddaughter faces in controlling this ability. Dodoria watches Momo with interest, believing that her granddaughter's psychic ability is intrinsic, although it seems to be sealed for some reason. She comments that Momo will need to strengthen this power over the course of her training. Reassuringly, Dodoria says that there is time for this, as Okarun will still take some time to develop sufficient physical strength. In the middle of the conversation, Momo looks away, and Okarun's curse escapes, with Granny Turbo taking control. She threatens Dodoria, offering a cruel choice: attack her with a heart attack or a stroke. Turbo then orders Momo to go to the tunnel later that night, under penalty of using Okarun to spread a curse like an epidemic. When night falls, Dodoria gives Momo and Okarun a protective vest against evil spirits. Watching them go, she advises her granddaughter to be careful. Instead of using the bicycles, they take the subway. On the way, Momo starts to take off her vest, and Okarun asks her, confused as to why she has removed the protection. She replies confidently that in fact, the Magaro only needs to be stylish in order to become stronger in its final version. At the entrance to the tunnel, Momo and Okarun argue about who should go ahead, throwing the responsibility on each other until Okarun suggests that they enter side by side, so that no one is unfairly treated. As they walk, Momo forgets Dodoria's instructions about meeting Granny Turbo. Okarun reminds her that they need to lure Granny Turbo out of Shono City and separate the evil spirit from her, which should weaken her and make the battle easier. Momo, remembering how they defeated the alien before, feels more confident, saying that the same should work with Turbo Granny since they were both powerful. Seeing this sudden courage, Okarun comments that just a few minutes ago, she was almost freaking out with fear. Momo, however, is dismissive, saying that Granny Turbo is just a ridiculous old woman and that they should be able to beat her without any problems. The next moment, they are surprised by the intimidating presence of Grandma Turbo, who makes Momo's courage evaporate instantly. Desperate, Okarun asks Momo to release the curse on his body. As soon as she does, depression hits, and he begins to feel negative, declaring that he is useless and unable to do anything to protect them. Momo, already used to Okarun's pessimism during his transformations, just ignores him, hoping that he will overcome the obstacle. However, when he begins to advance towards the enemy, the curse suddenly disappears, leaving them both confused and vulnerable. And then Granny Turbo reveals to Okarun that she has removed his curse, returning his lost amulet, and depriving him of any power. With no other option, Momo tries to remember the words of Seiko, who had mentioned that Granny Turbo is easily provoked when it comes to racing. The idea is simple. Just challenge her to a competition and let her take the bait. As she is almost swallowed up by the entity, Momo takes a chance and teases Granny Turbo, saying that she is only going for ignorance because she knows she would lose to her in a race. Momo challenges the entity, suggesting that Granny Turbo doesn't have the courage to accept. The bluff is clear to everyone except Granny Turbo, who convinces herself that she can catch them easily. She accepts the challenge and asks about the rules. Momo, without much structure, says that it's basically a game of catch. If Granny Turbo can reach them, she wins. The only rule is that the entity must count to 10 minutes before starting to chase them. But being who she is, Granny Turbo decides that 10 minutes translates into 10 seconds for her. As soon as the countdown is over, she captures Momo and advances on Okarun. At that moment, he, reflecting on how Momo always ends up saving the day, takes the initiative and, in a desperate act, bites Granny Turbo, promising not to let her go until she curses him back. The entity, annoyed, ends up giving in, returning the curse to the boy. Now, with his powers restored, Momo seizes the opportunity and gets Granny Turbo trapped in Okarun's body, allowing them to have some control over the entity. But while Granny Turbo tries to free herself from Momo's control, she summons the spirit of the place to attack them both, threatening them directly. They both manage to run out of the tunnel, but the crab-shaped spirit chases them. Okarun doesn't understand what's going on, and Momo explains that, according to legend, the dead take the form of freshwater crabs to cross the Sanzo River. Meanwhile, Granny Turbo continues to give orders to the spirit, telling it to finish them off. Momo decides to try to use the power of Grandma Turbo's curse on Okarun again to face the crab, but on hearing this, the old woman refuses to cooperate and tells them not to use her power without her permission. Momo, however, holds firm, while Okarun complains about her weight, saying that he won't be able to make the turn because of her weight. The two end up crashing into a guardrail and are thrown off the track and into the city. Before they hit the ground, Okarun manages to cushion their fall, but just then, the giant crab lands next to them, resuming the chase. As they run, Momo notices that the people around them can't see the giant crab. She hopes that none of her friends witness the scene, as they might think she's gone mad. Meanwhile, Okarun begins to lose strength, but Momo encourages him to give it his all. Okarun explains that continuing at this pace won't be enough to get them out of Shono City, as they still have a long way to go, and if they carry on like this, the crab spirit will catch up with them before they can escape. Momo, determined not to be devoured, guides Okarun to the right, entering a place with narrow corridors. The crab, however, is still on their tail, destroying everything around it. When they reach an area with water, Okarun tells them that they are at a disadvantage because water is the crab's element. However, Momo remembers that it's a hot spring and throws the crab into the hot water, cooking its flesh and tensing the enemy's muscles, slowing it down. Okarun, still slightly frightened, is relieved to see that the crab has finally stopped moving. As for Momo, she comments that the monster looks more appetizing now that it's reddened. Seeing her appetite for the creature that almost killed them, Okarun calls her crazy and suggests that they leave the place and the crab behind as soon as possible. Momo begins to guide them to a street that they can use to get out of the city of Shono. However, in the middle of the road, a crowd comes running towards them, leaving them at a loss to understand what is going on. Just then, Grandma Turbo reappears and says that she won't let them escape so easily. She explains that she spoke to a spirit who was asleep in a nearby cemetery and asked him to summon an army of the dead to chase them. Meanwhile, Momo and Okarun keep trying to flee the scene until, suddenly, Momo stumbles and falls to the ground. Okarun goes back to help her, but Granny Turbo takes advantage of this moment to surround them from all directions. With no way out, Momo asks Okarun to launch a direct attack. He hesitates, realizing that this may not be effective, since the goal is to reach the nearby town. Momo then holds him by the shirt, staring at him seriously, and tells him to give it his all or they'll end up dead right there. Seeing her seriousness, Okarun decides to obey, activating his transformation, while Momo directs him to the right places. They use the giant crab as a lever to launch themselves away from the crowd, returning to the street where they were before. In the middle of the jump, Momo notices that Okarun has returned to his normal appearance, and they both start to fall. Momo manages to cushion the fall, but Okarun feels his body all bruised and admits that he can't continue the fight like this. Momo is also in a lot of pain, but asks him to hurry up and get up as soon as possible. In the midst of the confusion, they realize that they lost sight of Grandma Turbo during the crash, and soon she reappears, complaining that she has been underestimated by them just because of her age. Momo admits that the old woman really is an incredible veteran, capable of intimidating even the youngest, and says that he respects her very much. Momo uses some English words in her speech, which makes Granny Turbo angry, as she believes Momo is trying to trick her with words she doesn't understand. Granny Turbo tells Momo to stop speaking English, and suggests that they start running immediately if they don't want to be devoured. Realizing that they are close to leaving the town of Shono, Grandma Turbo decides to show one last act of compassion by giving them a little time to run. Before resuming the chase, Momo challenges Turbo Granny, saying that she only needs a second to escape. In that second, Momo grabs a train from the Takasak line with her spiritual power, throwing herself aboard a train that reaches 120 kilometers, a speed that surpasses Granny Turbo's maximum speed of just 100 kilometers. However, Granny Turbo patiently waits for the train to slow down on a bend and jumps aboard. With this, she boasts of her intelligence, pointing out that trains don't maintain 121 kilometers all the time, while she is able to run at top speed all the time. While the old woman brags, Momo replies that she just took a ride on her defeat. Meanwhile, Seiko is waiting for Momo and Okarun on the border between the cities, where she welcomes them to the city of Shigo, a territory where Turbo Granny has no power at all, and where Seiko can use all her power. Taking advantage of the fact that she is in favorable territory, Seiko uses all her power against Turbo Granny, completely wiping her out. After defeating the crab, Okarun wakes up, frightened, asking about the giant crab and Turbo Granny who were chasing them. Exhausted, Momo falls to the ground, saying that they've managed to finish them both off. Seiko then takes them back to the tunnel where Turbo Granny used to roam, a place with a heavy aura, known for being where several girls were raped, dismembered, and killed. As a tragic consequence, these young women became evil spirits against their will. Seiko reveals that Granny Turbo had been monitored for a long time, as she always appeared wherever there were spirits of girls who had died unjustly. Although it seemed that Granny Turbo was trying to console these spirits, she was using the dead to attack the living, something that is completely forbidden. This forced the mediums to capture Grandma Turbo and send her to the other world by force. Seiko also makes it clear that the same logic applies to the living. They must also show respect for the dead. When they return home, they serve crab for dinner. However, Okarun loses his appetite because of everything that has happened, and Seiko jokingly calls him a spoiled child and asks him if he really has something between his legs. Okarun, a little indignant, says yes, to which Seiko, standing up, teases him, asking him to prove it, and showing that she wants to see what he has. She starts chasing him around the house, adding to the provocation. At the end of the night, Okarun says goodbye to Momo. She also says goodbye, but realizing that it sounds a bit distant, she calls him again, saying, "See you tomorrow," leaving the hope in the air that they will meet at school the next day. The next day, Okarun is nervous about talking to Momo again and rehearses ways of greeting her, trying to prevent her from realizing that he is too shy for a simple morning greeting. When he arrives at the school gate, he finds her leaning against the wall, seemingly waiting for someone. He thinks for a moment that she might be waiting for him, but then comes to his senses and assumes that it must be someone else. So he decides to just walk past her, as if he hadn't seen her. However, Momo calls out to him and suggests that they walk to the living room together. On the way, she mentions again the day they met those aliens, curious about how they lived and what they ate. When they get to the classroom, Momo says goodbye, and Okarun starts the day being bullied by his classmates. He decides to forgive each one of them, as he now has an amazing friend, Momo. Meanwhile, Momo sits in her corner, more introspective than usual. Her friends begin to comment on her, speculating that something may have happened, perhaps even a problem with her ex-boyfriend, which would have led Momo to break her own cell phone. While her friends talk about her, Momo murmurs quietly, wishing she could talk to Okarun about aliens. On the other side, Okarun also feels like talking to Momo about ghosts and supernatural events. As time goes by, they both have these thoughts in their heads. At break time, the two pass each other without seeing each other. Momo goes to a group of students in Okarun's class and asks for him, but the boys are confused, not knowing who she is talking about, as she calls him Okarun. Momo tries to describe him as the guy with glasses who likes occult things, but they still don't understand and suggest that he must be in the cafeteria. Meanwhile, Okarun tries to ask for Momo in her living room, but his voice comes out so low and timid that no one can hear him properly. So Okarun decides to go out into the corridors and look for Momo in the cafeteria. Meanwhile, Momo goes to the school store, imagining that he would be in a quieter place, away from the noise of the cafeteria. Okarun arrives at the cafeteria, but realizing that Momo isn't there, decides to go to the school store. In the meantime, Momo comes out of the store and passes the cafeteria, resulting in another mismatch between them. After several attempts to find her, Okarun begins to suspect that Momo is deliberately avoiding him. He thinks that perhaps she has realized that he can be boring company, especially since he didn't manage to greet her properly that morning. Meanwhile, Momo, who is literally on a nearby bench, notices that Okarun seemed depressed earlier. She begins to think that perhaps he doesn't feel comfortable talking to her in this proximity and blames herself for not having considered his feelings more carefully. At the same time, Okarun also feels bad about the situation, wondering if he's just a backup friend for Momo, since she always seems to be surrounded by people. Okarun begins to think that Momo might not even consider him a real friend. As the two walk in opposite directions, immersed in their thoughts, they bump into each other and accidentally kiss. Surprised, Momo asks what he's doing there, and Okarun explains that he's been looking for her all this time. Momo, surprised, reveals that she was also trying to find him. Confused, Okarun admits that he thought she was avoiding him, to which Momo replies that she thought the same about him. The situation gets even more awkward when Momo's friends show up, and, upon seeing the kiss, start pointing and commenting. They joke that Momo was acting strange precisely because she was looking forward to meeting Okarun. Feeling embarrassed, Momo and Okarun start arguing and belittling each other, ending with each going in opposite directions, promising not to speak to each other again. As Momo's two friends watch the scene, they comment that, despite everything, the two seem to get on better than they imagined. Later, Okarun reflects and realizes that he got into an argument with Momo on impulse, when in fact, he just wanted to talk to her about ghosts and supernatural phenomena. Determined to apologize, he prepares to try again. Meanwhile, Momo is approached by other girls who want to know more about the mysterious boy they saw her with. One of her friends reveals that he's a nerd with bottle-bottom glasses, causing everyone to laugh. Suddenly, Okarun appears in Momo's room, still reflecting on a revelation he had in the bathroom. He asks to talk to Momo immediately, but she makes it clear that she doesn't want to talk to him anymore and tells him to leave. Okarun insists, explaining that it's important, but Momo's resistance causes the other girls in the room to start making fun of the situation, commenting that they're having a lover's DR. Momo, embarrassed, reaffirms that Okarun is not her boyfriend. Okarun, confused, asks why Momo is avoiding talking to him now. She replies, remembering that he also said he wouldn't talk to her anymore. He explains that he only said it impulsively, because she was the one who said it first, but in reality, he still wants to talk. Momo, however, remains firm and continues to avoid talking to him. Frustrated, Okarun wonders if it's that embarrassing to be his friend, and, disappointed, walks away, believing that Momo is ashamed to have him as a friend. On the way out of school, a girl bumps into Okarun and starts apologizing, touching him in a rather exaggerated way. He becomes visibly tense and tries to walk away, but the girl continues to follow him, saying that he is very kind. Momo, walking down the corridor, sees Okarun with this new friend and finds it strange, since he had said he had no friends apart from her. As soon as the girl walks away, Momo hears her telling a friend that she managed to make the nerd fall in love quickly. She mocks Okarun, saying that he would never have a chance with another pretty girl like her in the future, and that she is doing him a favor by letting him dream. Outraged by these absurdities, Momo uses her power of telekinesis to drop an iron bucket on the girl's head, who collapses instantly. Seeing the situation, Okaran tries to run to help the girl, but Momo holds him back and calls him to go home with her, saying that a person as shallow as that would never understand his true charm. On the way home, Momo apologizes to Okaran, admitting that she acted like an idiot. She explains that she panicked when the rumors about the kiss started spreading among her friends, and that's why she ended up acting as if she was ashamed of him. Okaran forgives her without hesitation, saying that he's not at all bothered by the situation. In fact, he's happy that they've reconciled. Having said that, Okaran changes the subject and asks what really happened to Grandma Turbo, since he fainted in the middle of the fight. Momo explains that they managed to defeat her, said a prayer, and what's more, his curse was broken, with everything returning to normal. However, he quickly corrects him, saying that despite this, his balls are still missing, which makes Momo burst out laughing. They decide to go to Seiko to try and solve the problem. Listening to Okaran, Seiko comments that this is why he didn't notice it was missing before, and he explains that he was so focused on the fact that the stick was back in place that he forgot about the rest. Momo jokes that, given its size, stick is an exaggeration, and that it looks more like a pencil. Okaran, embarrassed, is speechless. To help, Seiko prepares a ritual and gives Okaran a gentle slap on the back. At that moment, Momo notices that his aura changes for a moment, so Seiko instructs Momo to remove the aura as soon as it transforms. When Momo does this, the talisman on the stuffed cat they were wearing starts to burn, and the cat runs out of the house. Momo tries to stop it, but it escapes, insulting everyone while claiming that it will kill anyone who tries to stop it from running away. As soon as Seiko appears, she quickly realizes that the spirit is still Grandma Turbo, which confuses everyone, since Momo and Okaran had already defeated the entity some time ago and sent it to the afterlife. Grandma Turbo, feeling underestimated, says that she would never be defeated by two brats like them. She explains that, while burning under the barrier technique, she took the opportunity to infiltrate Okaran's body again, completely erasing his presence to avoid detection. Her plan was to hide until her spiritual power had fully recovered, allowing her to return to take revenge and finish what she had started. Momo, surprised, recalls that they had already eliminated Grandma Turbo, but the spirit denies defeat, making it clear that the battle isn't over yet. Noticing her confidence, even if it is weakened, Momo wonders if Granny Turbo understands that they are now in control. When Okaran demands back his balls, Granny Turbo, in a twist, decides to use them as hostages. And then, Grandma Turbo, in a masterstroke, reveals that if they try to destroy her, Okaran's balls will disappear forever. She then demands that he take a knife and eliminate Momo and Seiko immediately, promising to return what he has lost if he obeys. This makes Okaran furious, and he suddenly manages to transform, even without any trace of Granny Turbo in his body. After all, only her consciousness has been transferred to a doll, but as Seiko explains, the supernatural powers still reside in the boy. She also claims that only she can restore Granny Turbo's consciousness, leaving the spirit completely in her hands. Momo, in an attempt to resolve the situation peacefully, proposes an exchange. Grandma Turbo returns Okaran's balls, and they return her powers. She even argues, appealing to Grandma Turbo's compassion, mentioning that she knows how much she cared about the girls who suffered and were in that monster. Granny Turbo even seems to be inclined to the idea, but with a mischievous laugh, she admits that she dropped Okaran's balls somewhere, and that she can't even remember where. Sometime later, Granny Turbo explains that Okaran's balls are stuck to her spiritual energy membrane, and from the glow, she believes they will be easy to find once he can see them. However, despite searching endlessly, Okaran says he still can't see anything, and Momo also complains, joking that it's impossible to find anything as small as his balls. Grandma Turbo then suggests that they may have already disappeared, considering that they can't be found anywhere. She goes on to explain that the male balls have a very strong vital energy, which ends up attracting ghosts and yokais, as many believe they can be reborn by collecting items with this energy. Evil ghosts often attack humans precisely to try to steal this life force. Upon hearing this, Momo begins to suspect that some evil spirit has stolen Okarin's balls, making his recovery practically impossible. While Okarin and Momo try to process this, Grandma Turbo simply ignores the seriousness of the situation without showing much concern. Frustrated, Momo and Okarin start begging Grandma Turbo to help with the search, but realizing that this will lead nowhere, Momo decides to go home and think about what they can do next. When they arrive, they explain the situation to Seiko, who offers to investigate with some friends to see if anyone has a solution. Before leaving, Seiko reminds Okarun that he still has Grandma Turbo's power inside him. Although this power is under control, she warns him that it is still very dangerous, and suggests that he remain calm while they try to solve the problem. The next day, Okarin goes to school as normal. One of the boys, who often teases him, approaches him, asking if he is really seeing Momo. Okarin denies it, but the boy asks him to introduce them, as he wants to try to be friends with her, mentioning how cute she is. Upon hearing this, Okarin thinks that the boy really is right. After all, Momo is very pretty. After these rather impure thoughts, Okarun controls himself and reaffirms that Momo is just a friend. But the student who was talking to him mentions a rumor about Momo, insinuating that she is easy. Okarun angrily grabs the boy by the collar, demanding to know who started this lie about his friend. In the heat of the moment, he begins to lose control, feeling the energy of the transformation increase. Realizing this, he lets go of his colleague and goes back to his desk, trying to calm down with his book of conspiracy theories. Suddenly, Grandma Turbo appears, noticing Okarin's frustration. He quickly takes her to a secluded spot to prevent anyone from seeing her. Granny Turbo tries to persuade him to let her into his body again, promising not to interfere once she regains her full power. But Okarun insists that she must return his balls first. He would never accept a deal with so many risks. The conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Momo, who asks what he's doing there. Remembering what his colleagues said about her being cute, Okarin walks away, embarrassed, unable to look at her. Upset, Momo goes back to her classroom and vents to her friends, mentioning that Okarun is ignoring her for no reason. A friend then tells her that she heard rumors that he had fought with other guys to defend her reputation. Surprised, Momo asks about the rumor and discovers that someone has spread lies about her, and that Okarun has lost control when he hears about it. Meanwhile, the same girl who spread the rumor walks down the corridor, full of herself. Satisfied with her work, she remembers her first encounter with Momo when she saw the demon wings on her. Convinced that Momo is some kind of demon in disguise, the girl feels as if she has been chosen to defeat her. With a touch of superiority, she decides that she is destined to put an end to Momo and begins to plan her next steps. To further reinforce her theory, Era takes one of Okarun's golden balls out of her pocket and claims that the fact that it fell near her is irrefutable proof that she is the chosen one. She remembers the moment she first came into contact with the object, when the ball fell out of nowhere on her head. When she picked it up, she had a vision of the exact moment when Grandma Turbo was exorcised by Seiko, with the sky shining brightly. She decided to keep the object in her pocket, convinced that there was a greater purpose. Back in the present, two of Aira's friends arrive with all the items she had asked for. They question whether they should really be doing something so bizarre. Aira insists that they are, because she believes that she has been chosen to defeat the demon called Momo Ayase. One of her friends, who is only helping out of loyalty, confesses that Aira has been acting strangely lately, and believes that they are about to do something abnormal. Just then, Aira runs towards the window, pointing to a supposed woman in red on the soccer field. Her friends look but see nothing where Aira is pointing. Aira, increasingly obsessed, claims that the figure is a spy sent by Momo to monitor her. Meanwhile, Momo tries to pull Okarin away from the situation, but he ignores her, saying that he needs to keep an eye on Grandma Turbo to make sure she doesn't run away. Momo then questions Granny about what she is doing there at school. After a brief discussion, Okarun intervenes, asking about the ball issue from before. Granny Turbo explains that she's not just wandering around the school, she's actually looking for the jewels of an old family. Momo calls her an idiot, saying that something like that would never be there at school. However, Okarun begins to realize that maybe Grandma isn't so wrong, since her balls could have been found by humans instead of a yokai. Granny Turbo adds that if a human touches the balls, they will awaken spiritual abilities and begin to see ghosts. Aira's vision of seeing bugs everywhere, although not crazy, is explained by the influence of the Okarin ball, which awakens in her a supernatural sensitivity. Furthermore, a human who touches objects with spiritual energy, such as the ball, also becomes visible to ghosts, increasing the risk of attacks. Aira, intrigued, continues to hold Okarin's ball in her hands while she watches a female figure dressed in red approach through the window. She decides to confront Momo personally and calls her for a private conversation. Momo says goodbye to Okarun, leaving him to continue his research, and follows Aira to an abandoned shed, surprised at the location chosen for the conversation. When they arrive, Momo asks Aira directly what she wants, but instead of answering, Aira and her friends pin her to the ground. Using a rosary, Aira tries to exorcise Momo, convinced that she will send her to another world. Her friends hold Momo tightly, but Momo manages to disperse them by spreading her wings. Aira then intensifies her attack, using the Okarin ball, pressing the object against Momo's face. Momo, surprised, immediately recognizes the item and realizes what Aira is holding. Just then, Okarun appears and runs towards them. However, before he can intervene, the ghost in red appears to Aira and introduces herself as her mother, holding her firmly. Seeing this, Okarun transforms and tries to attack the spirit, which interprets his attack as a threat and swallows him to remove him from the situation. Momo tries to rescue him with her powers, but with her hands still trapped, she can't help, and Okarun ends up being swallowed whole. Turning his attention to Aira, the ghost in red says that he has been waiting for this moment for over 10 years. Aira, stunned, is confused, believing the ghost to be an ally of Momo. But the spirit corrects her, calling her a fool and revealing once again that it is her mother. The entity then asks Aira to call it Mommy again, just as she did as a child. Apparently, in her childhood, Aira had lost her way and mistaken the ghost for her mother, holding her hand and calling her Mama. Since then, the spirit has been following the girl. In the midst of the confusion, Momo mocks the ghost, calling it Old Man, and demanding that it return Okarin, pointing out that attacking humans breaks the rules between spirits and mortals. Aira, seeing Momo confront the spirit, asks for help to defeat the creature, completely at a loss to understand the situation. Meanwhile, Grandma Turbo, using Momo's friend's cell phone, searches for information about the ghost. Aira, in her confusion, believes that being chosen from heaven is a consequence of her beauty, and promises to defeat the monster, leaving the spirit touched, although upset at being called a monster. With that, the ghost swallows Aira. Turning to Momo, the spirit accuses her of turning her daughter into a delinquent, and as she approaches to swallow her too, Momo calls Grandma Turbo, but the entity reminds her that she has no powers and that Momo is responsible for this situation. With no alternative, Momo resists while the ghost binds her with its hair, trying to force her to call it Mommy in exchange for forgiveness. Refusing, Momo calls him an idiot once again, and ends up swallowed up like the others. At this point, Grandma Turbo decides to act and orders the ghost to free the three of them. Reluctantly, the ghost refuses, but when he discovers that he has swallowed some of Grandma Turbo's hair along with Momo, he realizes that he has made a mistake. The digestion of the hair generates a reaction, and with a fire forming inside the ghost, it has no choice but to release everyone. In the end, everyone escapes, but they end up with torn clothes and practically half naked. And, of course, Ira continues her madness. This episode was absolutely insane, and if you want to see more like it, subscribe and see you in the next video.